About 400,000 years ago, a remarkable group of early humans, known as the Neanderthals, began living across Europe and parts of Western Asia. They faced freezing winters, dangerous animals, and a harsh world that tested their strength every day. Yet they survived for hundreds of thousands of years by learning, adapting, and working together. They made tools, hunted large animals, controlled fire, built simple shelters, and cared for injured members of their groups. Neanderthals were a group of ancient humans who lived across large parts of Europe and Western Asia for a very long time. They were close relatives of modern humans and belonged to the human family. Scientists call them Homo neanderthalensis. Their story covers hundreds of thousands of years and shows how human groups were able to live through many changes in climate, land, plants, and animals. They were skilled hunters, careful tool makers, and people who knew how to survive in places that were often cold and difficult. Their remains have helped scientists learn a great deal about the history of humans and the many different groups that lived on Earth before the present day. Neanderthals first appeared about 400,000 years ago. They developed from earlier human groups that had already been living in Europe for a very long time. Over many thousands of years, these earlier people slowly changed as they adapted to their surroundings. The weather became colder during many periods, and the land changed many times because of the movement of large sheets of ice. Forests grew during warmer times, while open grasslands spread during colder times. Animals also changed as the environment changed. Neanderthals lived through these changing conditions and became well suited to the places where they lived. Their fossils have been found in many countries. Scientists have discovered their bones, teeth, and tools in caves, river valleys, forests, mountains, and open land. These discoveries show that Neanderthals lived across a huge area that stretched from Western Europe to parts of Western Asia. Their remains have been found in places that are now Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Croatia, Greece, the United Kingdom, Iraq, Israel, Syria, Uzbekistan, and other nearby regions. Every new discovery adds more information about their lives and helps scientists understand how they moved from one place to another over many generations. The name Neanderthal comes from a valley in Germany where important bones were discovered during the 19th century. In the year 1856, workers found unusual bones in a limestone cave in the Neander Valley. At first, people did not understand what the bones were. Some believed they belonged to a modern person who had lived only a short time before. Others thought they came from someone with a serious illness. As more fossils were discovered in different places, scientists slowly realized that the bones belonged to an ancient group of humans that had lived long before recorded history. The study of Neanderthals became more detailed as new discoveries were made. Better tools for studying bones, rocks, and ancient objects helped scientists learn their age. New ways of studying tiny pieces of bone and teeth also gave information about their food, health, and family connections. During the late 20th century and the early 21st century, scientists learned how to study ancient DNA. This allowed them to examine small pieces of genetic material that had survived inside some Neanderthal bones. These studies showed that Neanderthals were closely related to modern humans. Neanderthals looked different from most people living today. They had strong bodies with wide shoulders and powerful arms and legs. Their bones were thick and their muscles were well developed. Their chests were broad and their hips were wide. These features helped them live in places where the weather was often cold. Their bodies were able to produce and keep heat more easily than a thinner body could. They were usually shorter than many modern people, but they were very strong. Their heads were also different in several ways. They had long skulls with low foreheads. Above their eyes was a thick ridge of bone. Their faces were large, and the middle part of the face reached farther forward than it does in most modern humans. They had wide noses, strong jaws, and large teeth. Even though their faces looked different, their brains were very large. In many cases, the size of a Neanderthal brain was as large as, or even larger than, the average brain of a modern human. Brain size alone does not tell scientists how people thought, but it shows that Neanderthals had the physical ability to carry out many difficult tasks. Their hands were shaped in ways that allowed them to hold tools firmly. Their fingers were strong, making it easier to grip stone tools, wooden spears, and other objects used in daily life. Their feet were also well suited for walking across rough ground, climbing hills, and traveling through forests and open land. Every part of their body shows signs of a life that required hard physical work almost every day. Neanderthals were active hunters. They hunted many kinds of animals depending on where they lived and what was available during different seasons. They hunted wild horses, deer, bison, wild goats, wild sheep, and other animals. In colder places, they also hunted animals that lived in open grasslands. Their success depended on careful planning and teamwork. Hunting large animals was dangerous, and it often required several people working together. Scientists have found wooden spears that were probably used by ancient human groups, and stone points that Neanderthals attached to wooden shafts. These tools helped them hunt from a short distance. They also used sharp stone knives to cut meat, remove animal skins, and prepare food. The marks left on animal bones show that Neanderthals knew how to separate meat from bone with great skill. Stone tools were an important part of Neanderthal life. They selected suitable rocks and carefully shaped them into useful tools. They struck one stone against another to remove thin pieces until the tool had the desired shape. This work required planning, experience, and steady hands. Many of their tools had sharp edges that could cut meat, scrape animal skins, shape wood, and prepare plant materials. Scientists often connect Neanderthals with a style of tool-making called the Mousterian tradition. This method involved preparing a stone core before removing flakes that could be shaped into useful tools. It was an organized way of making tools that reduced waste and allowed people to produce many sharp, cutting edges. Different sites show that Neanderthals sometimes made tools that matched the work they expected to do, showing that they planned ahead. Fire played an important part in their lives. Neanderthals used fire for warmth during cold weather. Fire gave light inside caves and outdoor camps after sunset. It helped cook meat and possibly some plant foods. Cooking made many foods easier to chew and digest. Fire also helped keep dangerous animals away from sleeping places. Charcoal, burned bones, and fireplaces found at many archaeological sites show that Neanderthals regularly used fire over long periods. Many Neanderthals lived in caves when caves were available, but they did not live only in caves. They also built camps in open areas. Evidence from different sites shows that they arranged places for cooking, making tools, sleeping, and carrying out other daily work. They chose places that gave them access to water, food, and good hunting areas. Some camps were used for only a short time, while others were visited again and again over many generations. Neanderthals understood the land around them. They knew where animals traveled, where useful stone could be found, where fresh water flowed, and where shelter was available during different seasons. This knowledge was passed from older members of the group to younger ones. Learning these skills took many years. and children probably watched adults closely as they grew older. Children were an important part of Neanderthal families. Fossils of children of different ages have been discovered at several sites. Their bones show that they grew steadily while learning the skills needed for adult life. They likely spent time playing, learning to make simple tools, gathering useful plants, and watching experienced hunters and tool makers. Adults probably cared for children closely because raising young people required many years of attention and support. Research on Neanderthal bones shows that many adults lived difficult lives. Broken bones were common. Some injuries healed completely, showing that injured people survived for many months or even years after being hurt. This tells scientists that other members of the group cared for them by providing food, protection, and help while they recovered. Elderly individuals have also been found with missing teeth and signs of long-term illness. Their survival suggests that family members continued to support them even when they could no longer do all the work themselves. Neanderthals probably spoke in some form, although scientists still study exactly how their speech sounded. The structure of their ears, throat, and the bones connected with speaking suggests that they were capable of producing many sounds. Their large brains and organized way of living also suggest that they communicated well enough to plan hunts, teach young people, share knowledge, and work together during daily life. They likely used many different sounds, facial expressions, and hand movements while communicating. Language would have helped them warn others about danger, organize hunting trips, divide work, and pass important information from one generation to the next. Communication also helped keep families and groups united during difficult times. Neanderthals gathered plant foods as well as hunting animals. Evidence from preserved plant remains, microscopic pieces found on tools, and tiny particles trapped in dental plaque shows that they ate seeds, nuts, fruits, berries, roots, mushrooms, and edible leaves when these foods were available. The exact foods changed from place to place because different plants grew in different environments. They also collected materials from nature for many purposes. Animal skins were cleaned and prepared for clothing or shelter. Wood was shaped into handles and spears. Bones could be shaped into useful objects. Plant fibers may have been twisted into simple cords. Every useful material was valuable because finding and preparing it required time and effort. The story of where and when Neanderthals lived begins hundreds of thousands of years ago during a time when the Earth looked very different from today. The climate changed many times over long periods. Some years were very cold, while other times were warmer. Large areas of land were covered with ice during the coldest periods, while forests and open grasslands spread across many places during warmer times. Animals moved from one area to another as the climate changed, and early human groups also followed these changes. Among the people who lived through these changing conditions were the Neanderthals. They became one of the best-known human groups from the distant past because they lived across a large part of Europe and Western Asia for a very long time. Scientists believe that Neanderthals appeared around 400,000 years ago. They did not appear all at once in every place. Their ancestors had already been living in Europe for many thousands of years before Neanderthals became a separate group. Over time, these earlier people slowly changed as they lived through many cold and warm periods. Their bodies and way of life changed little by little. After many generations, they became what scientists now call Neanderthals. Neanderthals lived for a very long time. They remained on the Earth until around 40,000 years ago. This means they survived for hundreds of thousands of years. During that long time, they faced many changes in weather, plants, animals, and the land around them. Even though these changes could make life difficult, Neanderthals continued to find ways to live, hunt, gather food, build shelters, and raise children. Even though these changes could make life difficult, Neanderthals continued to find ways to live, hunt, gather food, build shelters, and raise children. Their long history shows that they were able to adjust to different conditions over many generations. Most of the places where Neanderthals lived are found across Europe. Their remains have been discovered in many countries, from the western edge of Europe to the eastern parts of the continent. Scientists have found bones, teeth, stone tools, fireplaces, and other signs of their lives in caves, open fields, river valleys, and mountain areas. Every discovery helps experts learn more about where these people lived and how they moved from one place to another. The first Neanderthal bones that gave this group its name were found in a valley in present-day Germany. The valley was called the Neander Valley. During the middle of the 19th century, workers discovered unusual bones inside a cave. At first, people were not sure what they had found. Some believed the bones belonged to a modern person with health problems. Others thought they belonged to an unknown group of ancient people. As more discoveries were made in different places, scientists realized that these bones belonged to a human group that had lived long before modern humans spread across Europe. The group became known as Neanderthals because of the valley where the important discovery was made. Over the years, scientists found Neanderthal remains in many other countries. Their bones have been discovered in France, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Croatia, Portugal, Greece, Hungary, Poland, the United Kingdom, and several other parts of Europe. These discoveries show that Neanderthals lived across a very wide area. They were not limited to one valley, one forest, or one mountain range. Instead, they occupied many kinds of land for a very long time. Neanderthals also lived outside Europe. Their remains have been found in parts of Western Asia. They lived in places that are now called Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Israel, Iran, and nearby regions. These discoveries tell scientists that Neanderthals spread far beyond Europe. They moved into many lands where rivers, hills, forests, open plains, and rocky areas offered different kinds of food and shelter. One of the best-known Neanderthal sites is Shanidar Cave in present-day Iraq. Scientists discovered the remains of several Neanderthal individuals there. These discoveries provided important information about their daily lives. The bones showed signs of injuries that had healed before death. This suggests that injured people lived for many years after being hurt. Such findings help scientists understand that Neanderthal groups looked after members who could no longer hunt or travel easily. Another important place is Kebera Cave in present-day Israel. Scientists found a well-preserved Neanderthal skeleton there. The bones helped experts learn more about the shape of the Neanderthal body. The skeleton showed that Neanderthals had strong bodies with wide shoulders, powerful arms, and solid legs. These features helped them move across rough land and survive in different climates. In France, many caves have provided important Neanderthal discoveries. One famous site is La Chapelle-aux-Saints. The skeleton found there became one of the earliest complete Neanderthal remains ever studied. At first, scientists believed this person walked with a bent back, because the skeleton belonged to an older adult whose bones had changed with age. Later discoveries showed that healthy Neanderthals stood upright, just as modern humans do. Spain has also provided many important Neanderthal sites. Caves and open areas across the country contain stone tools, animal bones, fireplaces, and human remains. These discoveries show that Neanderthals lived in Spain during different periods. They return to some places many times over thousands of years. Each visit left behind new tools, burned wood, broken animal bones, and other signs of daily life. Portugal has also produced evidence of Neanderthal communities. Archaeologists have uncovered stone tools and bones showing that these people hunted local animals and used natural shelters. Some sites suggest that Neanderthals stayed for long periods, while others may have been used only during certain seasons when food was easier to find. Italy also has several important Neanderthal sites. Caves along the coast and farther inland contain remains that help scientists understand how these people lived in different environments. Some caves protected families from cold winds and heavy rain. Other places provided easy access to rivers, forests, and hunting grounds. Croatia is another country where Neanderthal remains have been found. One famous site, Krapina, has produced a large number of bones belonging to many individuals. Scientists have studied these remains for many years. The discoveries show that people of different ages lived there, including children, adults, and older individuals. This tells experts that Neanderthal groups included families living together over many generations. Belgium has also yielded important discoveries. Several caves have produced bones and tools that show Neanderthals occupied the area during different periods. The remains help scientists understand how these people adapted to changing weather over many thousands of years. The Netherlands has provided evidence that Neanderthals sometimes lived in places that are now beneath the sea. During colder periods, sea levels were much lower than they are today. Land that is now covered by water was once dry ground where animals and humans could travel. As the climate became warmer and ice melted, the sea slowly covered these areas. Fishermen have sometimes brought ancient bones and stone tools to the surface, giving scientists clues about lands that disappeared beneath the water. The United Kingdom also has evidence showing that Neanderthals entered the region during times when it was connected to mainland Europe by dry land. During colder periods, lower sea levels created wide areas of land that allowed people and animals to move freely. Later, rising sea levels separated the island from the rest of Europe. This changing landscape affected where Neanderthals could travel and settle. The climate played a major part in deciding where Neanderthals lived. They did not remain in one place throughout their history. Instead, they often moved as the environment changed. During colder times, some regions became difficult to live in because food became scarce. During warmer periods, forests spread into areas that had once been open land. Animals changed their paths, and Neanderthal groups followed the food they depended upon. Large animals such as bison, horses, deer, wild cattle, reindeer, and mammoths lived in many of the same regions as Neanderthals. These animals provided meat, bones, skins, and other useful materials. Since the animals moved from one place to another, Neanderthals often moved with them. Their lives were closely connected to the natural world around them. Neanderthals chose places that offered fresh water because every group needed water for drinking, preparing food, and daily life. Rivers, streams, and lakes were important parts of the landscape where they settled. Water also attracted animals, making these places useful for hunting. As a result, many Neanderthal sites discovered by archaeologists are located close to ancient rivers or other water sources. They also made use of caves whenever they were available. Caves offered protection from rain, snow, strong winds, and cold temperatures. They provided a safe place to sleep, prepare food, make tools, and care for children. Not every Neanderthal group lived in caves all the time. Many groups also built simple shelters in open areas using wood, branches, animal skins, and other natural materials. These shelters have mostly disappeared because they were made from materials that slowly broke down over thousands of years. However, the remains of stone tools, fireplaces, and animal bones continue to help scientists identify the places where Neanderthals once lived. The ancestors of the Neanderthals began to change over a very long period as the climate, land, plants, and animals of Europe and parts of Asia changed. Their evolution was not sudden. It happened little by little over hundreds of thousands of years. Each generation inherited small changes from the one before it. Some of these changes helped them live better in cold places, find food, avoid danger, and raise children. Over time, these small changes became common in the population and led to the appearance of the Neanderthals. The earliest members of the human family came from Africa. Around 2 million years ago, some early humans left Africa and spread into Europe and Asia. These early groups faced different weather, different food, and different environments. As they settled in new places, their bodies and behavior slowly changed. Scientists believe that one important ancestor of the Neanderthals was Homo heidelbergensis, a human species that lived hundreds of thousands of years before the Neanderthals. Around 700,000 years ago, populations of these early humans became separated from one another. Some remained in Africa, while others lived in Europe and Western Asia. Because these groups lived far apart for many generations, they slowly developed different features. The people living in Europe experienced long periods of cold weather during the Ice Age. These conditions shaped the evolution of the Neanderthals. Cold weather played a major part in their development. The winters were long and many places were covered with snow and ice. Food was often difficult to find. Early humans who had body features that helped them keep warm had a better chance of surviving and having children. Over many generations, these helpful features became more common. Neanderthals developed short and strong bodies. Their arms and legs were shorter than those of many other early humans. They had wide chests, thick bones, and strong muscles. These features helped them keep body heat during cold weather. Their large noses helped warm and moisten the cold air before it reached their lungs. Their skulls became larger, and their brains were as large as, or even larger than, those of modern humans. Their brains also changed as they learned to solve problems. They had to remember where animals moved during different seasons, how to make useful tools, where to find stone, wood, and water, and how to work together during hunts. Their growing intelligence helped them survive in difficult conditions. Natural selection guided many of these changes. Individuals with features that improved survival were more likely to live long enough to have children. Those children inherited many of the same helpful traits. Over many thousands of generations, these traits spread through the population until they became common among Neanderthals. Their faces also changed during evolution. They developed large brow ridges above their eyes. Their faces projected forward more than those of modern humans. Their jaws were strong, although they had no pointed chin like modern humans. These features developed gradually over many generations. Their hands became powerful and well-suited for making tools. Neanderthals shaped stone into sharp cutting tools, scrapers, and spear points. They used these tools to cut meat, scrape animal skins, prepare wood, and perform many daily tasks. Better tools helped them survive, and knowledge about making them was passed from one generation to the next. Their hunting skills also improved. Early Neanderthals worked together to hunt large animals such as bison, horses, deer, wild cattle, and mammoths. Hunting in groups required planning, communication, and trust. Young members learned these skills by watching older members of the group. Fire became an important part of their lives. They used it for warmth, cooking, light, and protection from dangerous animals. Cooked food was easier to eat and digest. Fire also allowed them to live in colder places for longer periods. Their social life became more organized during evolution. Neanderthals cared for injured and elderly members of their groups. Archaeological discoveries show that some individuals survived serious injuries for many years, which means others helped feed and protect them. This caring behavior increased the chances that knowledge and experience were passed to younger generations. Language may also have developed further during their evolution. Although scientists cannot know exactly how Neanderthals spoke, evidence from their bones, ears, brain structure, and genes suggests they could probably produce many spoken sounds. Better communication made hunting, teaching, and daily life easier. Their genes continued changing through many generations. Small genetic changes affected body shape, skin, hair, immunity, and many other features. These changes happened slowly and accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. Around 400,000 years ago, Neanderthals had become clearly different from their earlier ancestors. They spread across much of Europe and into Western Asia. They adapted to forests, grasslands, mountains, river valleys, and cold open lands. Different groups lived in caves, rock shelters, and simple outdoor camps depending on the local environment. As time passed, Neanderthals continued to evolve. They improved their tools, hunting methods, and ability to survive the changing climates. Around 70,000 years ago, modern humans began spreading from Africa into Europe and Asia. For thousands of years, Neanderthals and modern humans lived in some of the same regions. They met, shared genes through interbreeding, and exchanged some knowledge and skills. Today, scientists know that many people living outside Africa still carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. This genetic evidence confirms that the two human groups had children together during their shared history. These inherited genes continue to influence certain human traits, including parts of the immune system and other biological features. The evolution of Neanderthals remains an important part of human history because it shows how human populations changed gradually as they adapted to different environments over very long periods of time. Around 400,000 years ago, the Earth looked very different from the way it does today. The land, the weather, the plants, the animals, and the people who lived during that time all existed in a world that changed slowly over many thousands of years. Life was shaped by nature every single day. There were no cities, no farms, no roads, and no machines. There were no written records to tell the story of those distant times. Everything that scientists know about this period has come from careful study of ancient bones, stone tools, caves, animal remains, soil, frozen ground, and many other clues that have remained in the earth for a very long time. The climate during this period was not always the same. The earth moved through long cold periods and warmer periods. These changes happened very slowly. During the colder times, huge sheets of ice covered large parts of the northern land. These ice sheets spread across wide areas and stayed there for many thousands of years. The weather became colder and many places received less rain than they do today. As the ice grew, the amount of water locked inside it increased. This caused the level of the seas to become lower. Land that is now under the sea became dry ground. Animals and early humans could move across these areas while they were above the water. Not every part of the world was covered by ice. Many places remained free from large ice sheets. Grasslands stretched across wide regions. Forests covered many valleys and hills. Rivers flowed through the land, carrying fresh water from mountains to lower areas. Lakes formed in places where water collected. Some deserts were already present, although their size changed as the climate became wetter or drier over time. The weather affected every living thing. Plants grew where enough water and sunlight were available. Animals followed the plants because they depended on them for food. Early humans followed the animals and also searched for plants, fruits, roots, seeds, and fresh water. The continents already stood in positions that looked much like those of today. Mountains, rivers, and coastlines were familiar in many regions, although some places looked different because of changing sea levels and the movement of rivers. Wind, rain, snow, and ice slowly shaped the land. Rivers cut through rock over long periods. Glaciers pushed rocks and soil as they moved. Volcanoes continued to erupt in some places, adding new layers of rock to the land. Earthquakes also happened as they do today, because the Earth's outer layer continued to move slowly. Many kinds of plants covered the land. Forests contained tall trees, smaller trees, bushes, and climbing plants. Open grasslands supported many kinds of grasses and wild flowers. Wetlands were filled with reeds and other water-loving plants. Mosses and small plants grew in damp places. Each kind of plant lived where the conditions suited it best. Some plants survived cold winters by slowing their growth. Others dropped their leaves during certain times of the year. Seeds spread through the wind, water, or animals, allowing new plants to grow in different places. Animals filled nearly every part of the world. Many kinds of deer lived in forests and open land. Wild horses moved across wide grasslands. Large cattle grazed in open areas. Mammoths walked across cold regions where grasses and small plants grew. Woolly rhinoceroses also lived in cold places. Giant deer with large antlers lived in some forests and open spaces. Bison gathered in groups and searched for fresh grass. Wild pigs looked for roots and fallen fruits. Goats and sheep climbed rocky hills where they could find food. Many meat-eating animals hunted these plant-eating animals. Lions lived in some parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Wolves hunted together in groups. Hyenas searched for food across open land and also fed on animals that had already died. Bears lived in forests and caves. Some bears were very large. Leopards hid among rocks and trees while waiting for the right moment to catch smaller animals. Saber-toothed cats had already disappeared from many places, while other large hunting animals continued to survive in different regions. Birds were also common. Large birds flew over rivers and lakes looking for fish. Smaller birds gathered seeds, insects, and fruits. Some birds stayed in one place all year, while others moved from one region to another. When the seasons changed, their movements helped spread seeds across wide areas. Birds also became food for larger animals and early humans. Rivers, lakes, and seas contained many kinds of fish. Freshwater fish lived in rivers and lakes. Saltwater fish filled the oceans. Shellfish lived near coastlines. Crocodiles survived in warmer regions where rivers stayed warm throughout the year. Frogs, turtles, snakes, and lizards lived in places that provided enough water and warmth for them to survive. Insects played an important part in nature. Bees collected nectar from flowers. Butterflies and other insects helped plants produce seeds by carrying pollen from one flower to another. Ants built large underground homes. Beetles broke down dead plants and animals. Flies, mosquitoes, and many other insects lived wherever they found enough food and water. Although they were small, insects affected the lives of larger animals every day. Early humans shared this world with many other human groups. Around 400,000 years ago, different groups of ancient humans lived across Africa, Europe, and parts of Asia. They were not exactly the same as people living today, but they already showed many human features. They walked upright, used their hands with great skill, and learned from one another. They cared for members of their groups and worked together to survive. Scientists have found fossils that show several kinds of early humans lived during this period. One important group was known as Homo heidelbergensis. Many scientists believe this group lived across Africa and Europe, and later gave rise to other human groups in different regions. Their bones show that they were strong and well suited for active lives. They hunted animals, gathered wild plants, and made useful tools from stone. Stone tools were among the most important objects made by early humans. They shaped pieces of stone by striking them with other stones. This removed sharp pieces and created cutting edges. These tools helped them cut meat, remove animal skins, break bones, shape wood, and prepare plants for eating. Different tools served different purposes. Some had sharp points for hunting, others had wide cutting edges. Many tools were carried from place to place and used many times before being thrown away. Wood was also an important material, although it does not survive as well as stone. Early humans shaped wooden sticks into spears for hunting. They may have used branches to dig for roots or to protect themselves from dangerous animals. Since wood decays over time, only a small number of wooden tools have survived until today. Fire had already become an important part of life for many human groups. Evidence from ancient camps suggests that people knew how to control fire in many places. Fire provided warmth during cold weather. It gave light after sunset. It helped keep dangerous animals away from camps. People also cooked food over fire. Cooking made meat softer and easier to chew. Some plants also became easier to eat after being heated. Fire helped dry animal skins and may have been used to harden wooden spear points. Life depended on finding enough food every day. There were no permanent food stores that lasted for long periods. People searched for berries, fruits, nuts, seeds, leaves, mushrooms, roots, insects, eggs, fish, and small animals. Hunting larger animals required careful planning. Members of a group often worked together to surround an animal or drive it toward a place where it could be killed. Success was never certain. Some hunts failed and people had to continue searching for other sources of food. Water was always necessary. Camps were often built near rivers, lakes, or springs because clean water supported both people and animals. Water was needed for drinking, preparing food, and cleaning. Animals also gathered near water, making these places good locations for hunting. Rivers provided fish and attracted birds and other wildlife that could also become food. Families lived in small groups. These groups probably included parents, children, older family members, and other relatives. Working together increased the chances of survival. Adults searched for food, watched for danger, cared for children, repaired tools, and gathered firewood. Older people may have shared knowledge gained from many years of experience. Young children learned by watching older members of the group and slowly developed the skills needed for daily life. People did not remain in one place throughout the year. They moved when food became scarce, when animals changed their paths, or when weather conditions became difficult. Some caves were used many times because they provided shelter from wind, rain, and snow. Other camps were built in open areas using branches, animal skins, and other natural materials. Different seasons brought different challenges and people adjusted their movements as conditions changed. They learned to understand the land around them. They recognized places where fresh water could be found. They remembered where certain plants grew during different seasons. They knew the paths used by animals and understood which places offered safety and which places carried greater danger. This knowledge was passed from one generation to another through daily life and careful observation. The physical features of Neanderthals were the result of many thousands of years of living in different parts of Europe and Western Asia. Their bodies changed slowly over a very long time as they lived through cold weather, changing seasons, and different natural conditions. Every part of their body had its own shape and size. Scientists have learned about these physical features by studying bones that were found in caves, river valleys, old campsites, and other places where Neanderthals once lived. The bones have helped experts understand what these ancient people looked like, how they moved, and how their bodies worked during everyday life. Neanderthals had strong and solid bodies. Their bones were thicker than those of modern humans. The bones in their arms, legs, shoulders, and hips were heavy and well formed. Their joints were also large and strong. These features show that their bodies were built for hard daily work. They walked long distances, gathered food, hunted animals, carried heavy objects, and lived without modern tools or machines. Their bones became strong because of both their natural body shape and the active lives they lived from childhood until old age. Most adult Neanderthals were not very tall. Their height usually stayed within a moderate range. Even though they were not very tall, they often weighed a good amount because their muscles and bones were thick. Their bodies had a solid build. Their arms and legs had powerful muscles that allowed them to perform difficult physical tasks every day. The muscles were attached to strong bones, and the places where the muscles connected to the bones were often larger than those seen in many modern human skeletons. This shows that the muscles were used often throughout their lives. Their heads were large. The skull of a Neanderthal was long from front to back. The back of the skull extended farther than it does in most people today. This gave the head a longer shape. The top of the skull was lower and flatter instead of being high and rounded. The bones of the skull were thick and strong. These thick bones protected the brain and gave support to the muscles attached around the head and neck. The forehead of a Neanderthal was lower than that of modern humans. Instead of rising almost straight upward, it sloped gently backward. Above the eyes was a thick ridge of bone. This brow ridge was one of the most noticeable parts of the Neanderthal face. It stretched across the face above both eyes. The ridge was made of solid bone and was much thicker than the brow ridge found in most people today. Scientists believe this was simply one of the natural features of the Neanderthal skull. The eyes of Neanderthals sat inside large eye openings. These openings were wide and rounded. Their eyes may have looked deep because of the heavy brow ridge above them. The bones around the eyes were strong and formed part of the face that helped support the skull. The eye sockets also held the muscles and soft tissues that allowed the eyes to move in different directions. The nose of a Neanderthal was large and wide. The opening inside the skull for the nose was much bigger than in modern humans. The bridge of the nose was broad, and the whole nose projected forward from the face. Inside the nose were spaces that allowed air to pass through before reaching the lungs. Scientists think the large nose was one of the normal features of the Neanderthal body and helped move air through the breathing passages. The middle part of the Neanderthal face projected forward. The bones around the nose and upper jaw extended farther outward than those of modern humans. This gave the face a different shape. The cheeks were also formed in a way that supported this forward part of the face. These facial bones were thick and solid. Together, they created a face that was strong and able to support powerful chewing muscles. The jaws of Neanderthals were large and strong. The upper and lower jaws held large teeth that were useful for chewing many kinds of food. Their teeth included front teeth for biting and back teeth for grinding. The front teeth often became worn after many years of use. Scientists have found that many Neanderthal teeth show signs of heavy wear. This suggests that they used their teeth often during everyday activities. Unlike most modern humans, Neanderthals did not have a chin that projected forward. The front part of the lower jaw was more straight and sloped backward. This is one of the easiest ways for scientists to tell the difference between a Neanderthal lower jaw and that of a modern human. Even without a chin, the lower jaw remained strong and supported the large teeth and powerful chewing muscles. The teeth of Neanderthals were generally larger than those of many people living today. Their front teeth were especially important during daily life. Evidence from worn teeth suggests that they sometimes held objects between their teeth, while using their hands for other tasks. Small marks found on some teeth show that hard materials came into contact with them many times. Their teeth became useful tools during many different activities, even though their main purpose was to eat food. Their neck was thick and supported the large head. The neck muscles connected firmly to the skull and shoulders. These muscles helped hold the head steady while walking, working, hunting, and carrying objects. The bones of the neck were strong enough to support daily movement over many years. The shoulders of Neanderthals were broad and powerful. The shoulder bones connected to thick upper arms that contained large muscles. These shoulders allowed the arms to move in many directions. The muscles around the shoulders helped with lifting, carrying, pushing, and pulling. Strong shoulders were important because daily survival depended on physical work. The collarbones were long and strong. These bones connected the shoulders to the chest and helped keep the shoulders stable during movement. Their shoulder blades were also large and provided space for strong muscles that controlled the movement of the arms. The upper body had many large muscles that worked together whenever Neanderthals hunted, gathered wood, carried animal meat, or built simple shelters. The chest of a Neanderthal was wide and deep. The ribs curved around the lungs and heart, protecting these important organs. The rib cage had enough room for the lungs to expand during breathing. The ribs were thick and strong, adding to the solid shape of the upper body. The muscles attached to the ribs helped with breathing and movement of the upper body. Their backbone supported the weight of the body from the head down to the hips. Each bone in the backbone allowed some movement while protecting the spinal cord inside. The backbone also provided support for many muscles that controlled movement. The lower part of the back helped transfer weight between the upper body and the legs during standing, walking, and lifting. The arms of Neanderthals were strong from the shoulders down to the hands. The upper arm bone was thick and had large areas where muscles attached. The forearm bones were also heavy and strong. These bones allowed the arms to perform difficult work every day. The muscles of the arms developed through constant activity during hunting, gathering, digging, and carrying. The elbows were large and stable. They allowed the forearms to bend and straighten while remaining strong enough to handle repeated physical effort. The wrist bones connected the forearm to the hand and allowed many different hand movements. These joints were important for gripping tools, preparing food, and making useful objects. The hands of Neanderthals were broad and powerful. Their fingers were shorter than those of many modern humans, but the finger bones were thick and strong. Their thumbs were also strong and helped create a firm grip. This allowed them to hold stone tools, wooden spears, animal skins, and other objects securely. The muscles inside the hands worked together with the fingers and thumbs to perform many different tasks. Their fingernails grew from the ends of the fingers just as they do in modern humans. Although fingernails do not survive in ancient remains, scientists know they were present because Neanderthals belonged to the human family. Fingernails protected the ends of the fingers and helped during activities that required careful hand movements. The hips of Neanderthals were broad and solid. The hip bones connected the backbone to the legs and helped support the body's weight. Strong muscles attached to the hips and helped with walking, standing, climbing, and lifting. The pelvis also protected important organs inside the lower body. Both male and female Neanderthals had strong hip bones, although the shape differed between the sexes because of their different biological roles. The legs were powerful and supported the entire body during movement. The thigh bone was thick and heavy. The muscles surrounding the thighs were large because they were used every day. These muscles helped Neanderthals walk across uneven ground, climb hills, cross streams, and travel through forests and open land. Their daily lives required constant movement, and the leg muscles played an important role in making this possible. The knees were large joints that allowed the legs to bend and straighten. The bones around the knees showed signs of supporting heavy body weight over many years. The lower leg bones were also thick and solid. These bones connected the knees to the ankles and provided strength during walking and running. The muscles of the lower legs helped control balance and movement over different kinds of ground. The ankles were strong and stable. They supported the body while standing and walking. The foot bones were well formed and able to carry the weight of the body across long distances. Their feet included a strong heel, a curved arch, and toes that helped maintain balance during movement. The big toe pointed forward, allowing efficient walking in much the same way as modern humans. The skin of Neanderthals does not survive in fossils, but scientists have learned something about it by studying ancient genetic material. Research suggests that some Neanderthals had light skin, while others may have had darker skin. Hair color also varied. Some may have had dark brown or black hair, while others may have had lighter brown or even reddish hair. Eye color may also have differed from one individual to another. These differences show that Neanderthals, like people today, did not all look exactly the same. The world that Neanderthals lived in was often cold, dry, and difficult. Their lives were shaped every day by changing weather, freezing temperatures, long winters, and short summers. They lived during a time when Earth's climate changed many times over hundreds of thousands of years. Some years were less severe, while other periods became much colder. These changes affected the land, the plants, the animals, and the lives of every Neanderthal group. They had to deal with conditions that demanded constant effort just to stay alive. Neanderthals lived across large parts of Europe and Western Asia. These places did not always have the same climate. Some regions were colder than others, while some had more rain or more snow. Even so, many of the areas where Neanderthals lived experienced long periods of cold weather. Huge sheets of ice covered the northern parts of Europe during the coldest times. Even though many Neanderthals did not live directly on these ice sheets, they still lived close enough to feel their effects. Cold winds blew across the land, temperatures dropped for long periods, and food became harder to find. The climate changed slowly over many generations, but there were also shorter periods when weather conditions shifted more quickly. A place that had grasslands for many years could later become covered with forests, and forests could later disappear as colder weather returned. Rivers changed their paths, lakes became larger or smaller, and some areas became too dry to support many plants. Neanderthals had to keep learning about these changing lands because their survival depended on knowing where food, water, and shelter could be found. During the coldest periods, winter lasted much longer than summer. Snow covered the ground for many months. Ice formed on rivers and lakes. The frozen ground became hard to dig. Walking across deep snow required extra energy. Hunting animals became more difficult because people had to move carefully across slippery ground while carrying heavy wooden spears and other tools. The cold affected every part of daily life. People needed enough food to keep their bodies warm. They needed animal skins to cover themselves. They needed fires that could burn for many hours. Gathering enough firewood became an important part of survival. Without a steady fire, the cold could become dangerous very quickly, especially during the night. The air during these cold periods was often dry. Dry air made the land lose moisture. Some areas became open grasslands with very few trees. In these places, finding wood for fires could become difficult. Neanderthals sometimes had to travel farther to collect enough fuel. In places where trees were rare, they may also have burned bones or other materials left behind by hunted animals to help keep fires burning. The changing climate also affected plants. Many kinds of trees could not survive the coldest weather. Forests became smaller and open areas became more common. Plants that needed warm conditions disappeared from many places. Only the strongest plants that could survive freezing temperatures remained. This meant that people could not always depend on gathering fruits, nuts, or edible leaves. Plant foods became less available during long winters. The short growing season limited the amount of food that plants could produce. Flowers bloomed for only a short time. Seeds ripened quickly before cold weather returned. Berries appeared during limited parts of the year. Neanderthals had to gather these foods whenever they became available because they knew they would soon disappear again. Animals also responded to changing climates. Some moved south when temperatures dropped. Others stayed in cold regions because thick fur and large bodies helped them survive. Herd animals often traveled long distances in search of grass. Neanderthal hunters had to follow these movements if they wanted enough meat to feed their families. This required careful planning, patience, and detailed knowledge of the land. Cold weather increased the amount of energy the human body needed every day. Staying warm required more food than living in a warm climate. A person who could not eat enough became weaker, making hunting and traveling even harder. This created a difficult cycle. Strong people could hunt better, while weak people found it harder to catch animals. Large animals became important food sources because they provided meat, fat, bones, skins, and other useful materials. Fat was especially valuable during cold weather because it supplied large amounts of energy. Bones could be used to make tools or burned in fires. Skins became clothing, blankets, and coverings for shelters. Every part of a hunted animal had value. The weather could change suddenly. Strong winds sometimes swept across open plains. Snowstorms reduced visibility and made travel dangerous. Heavy snowfall covered animal tracks, making hunting more difficult. Cold rain soaked clothing made from animal skins, creating discomfort until the skins dried near a fire. Many rivers became barriers during different seasons. In warmer months, fast-moving water could make crossing dangerous. During winter, frozen rivers sometimes became easier to cross, but thin ice carried serious risks. Neanderthals had to judge carefully whether the ice was strong enough to support their weight. Living close to caves offered protection from many weather conditions. Caves blocked cold winds and gave people dry places to sleep. They also protected fires from rain and snow. Many Neanderthal groups used caves whenever they were available. However, caves were not found everywhere. In open areas, people likely built simple shelters using wood, branches, animal skins, and other natural materials. Even inside caves, life remained challenging. Smoke from fires could fill enclosed spaces. Cold air entered through cave openings. Water sometimes dripped from cave ceilings. Darkness covered large parts of caves unless fires remained lit. People had to keep adding fuel throughout the day and night. Finding enough firewood required constant work. Small branches burned quickly, while larger pieces lasted longer. Wet wood produced more smoke and less heat. Dry wood burned better, but could be difficult to find after heavy snowfall or rain. People needed experience to recognize which types of wood made the best fires. Fire served many purposes beyond warmth. It provided light during long winter nights. It allowed meat to be cooked. It made some foods easier to digest. It helped dry wet clothing. Smoke may have discouraged dangerous animals from coming too close. Fire also allowed people to continue making tools after sunset. Winter darkness affected daily routines. In northern regions, daylight became much shorter during winter months. People had fewer hours for hunting, gathering, and traveling. They needed to use daylight carefully because moving through unfamiliar land in darkness increased danger. Cold weather also affected stone tools. Frozen hands lost feeling more quickly, making it harder to shape stone with accuracy. Holding cold stones for long periods caused discomfort. People probably warmed their hands near fires before continuing detailed work. The harsh climate placed extra pressure on children. Young children lost body heat faster than healthy adults. They depended on older family members for warmth, food, protection, and care. Mothers and other adults likely wrapped infants in animal skins to help them stay warm. Children probably spent more time close to fires during the coldest months. Older adults also faced difficulties. Cold weather demanded physical strength for gathering wood, hunting, carrying supplies, and traveling. As people aged, these activities became harder. Even so, older Neanderthals probably remained valuable because they carried knowledge about hunting grounds, changing seasons, edible plants, and safe shelters. The landscape itself looked very different during cold periods. Large open plains stretched across wide areas. Trees became less common in some regions. Frozen ground covered much of the surface. Wind carried dust across dry land during certain seasons. In other places, snow covered everything for long periods. Not every year brought the same weather. Some winters became especially severe, while others were less harsh. Summers also varied. A warmer summer could produce more plants and attract more animals. A poor summer reduced available food before winter arrived. This meant that each year presented different challenges. Climate changes happened over thousands of years. Neanderthal groups experienced gradual shifts in their surroundings. Children grew into adults while seeing forests slowly expand or shrink. Rivers slowly changed course. Animal populations increased or decreased depending on weather conditions and available food. Periods of warmer climate allowed forests to spread across many regions. Trees became more common and different animals entered these woodlands. Hunting methods needed to change because animals living in forests behaved differently from animals living on open grasslands. Dense forests limited visibility and required hunters to move quietly between trees. When colder conditions returned, forests retreated again. Open grasslands expanded. Different animals replaced those that preferred forests. Neanderthals had to adjust once more. Their knowledge of animal behavior became one of their greatest strengths. Strong winds made cold temperatures feel even colder. Wind removed body heat more quickly. Open areas offered little protection. Hills, rocks, forests, and caves became important places where people could escape powerful winds. Choosing a campsite carefully could make daily life safer and more comfortable. Rain created additional problems. Wet clothing increased heat loss. Wet firewood became harder to burn. Muddy ground slowed travel. Hunting became more difficult because animal tracks disappeared under rain or became harder to follow. Snow could both help and create problems. Fresh snow revealed footprints left by animals, making tracking easier. At the same time, deep snow slowed movement and increased exhaustion. Carrying heavy animal meat through thick snow required great effort. Frozen ground made gathering edible roots more difficult. Digging through hard soil demanded stronger tools and more energy. Some food sources remained hidden beneath snow for many months. This forced people to depend more heavily on meat during winter. The harsh climate influenced where Neanderthal groups settled. They often chose places close to fresh water, hunting grounds and shelter. Living too far from water created daily difficulties. Living too far from hunting areas required longer journeys. Every decision about where to stay affected survival. Many groups probably moved from place to place during different seasons. If animals migrated, hunters followed them. If weather became too severe in one area, people may have traveled to regions with slightly better conditions. These seasonal movements helped increase access to food and resources. Travel itself was difficult. Cold weather increased the amount of clothing people needed to carry. Hunting equipment added extra weight. Families traveled with children and older adults, making movement slower. Rivers, hills, snow and ice all created obstacles along the way. The harsh climate affected water supplies. Some streams froze completely during winter. Others continued flowing beneath thick layers of ice. Breaking ice to reach drinking water required effort. Snow could sometimes be melted near fires, but this also required fuel. Food storage presented another challenge. Fresh meat spoiled during warmer seasons, but stayed frozen during winter. Frozen meat could last longer, although it became very hard and required thawing before cooking. During warmer weather, people probably needed to eat meat more quickly or dry it for later use. The changing seasons influenced hunting plans. During spring, many animals gave birth to young. Summer offered more plant foods. Autumn became an important time for hunting because many animals were healthy after feeding through warmer months. Winter demanded careful use of available food. Cold weather influenced the health of Neanderthals. Frostbite may have affected exposed skin during severe cold. Breathing freezing air placed pressure on the body. Injuries healed more slowly when food became scarce. Illness could spread more easily when groups stayed together inside shelters for long periods. Smoke from indoor fires may have affected breathing. Spending many hours near smoky fires could irritate the lungs and eyes. Even so, the warmth provided by fire remained essential for survival. The harsh climate also shaped daily routines. Much time had to be spent collecting wood, repairing clothing, preparing food, maintaining fires, and checking shelters for damage. Every family member likely had responsibilities that helped the group survive. Animal skins required careful preparation before becoming useful clothing. Fresh skins had to be cleaned, stretched, and treated so they would remain soft. Wet skins became stiff if they dried without proper care. Well-prepared clothing helped reduce heat loss during freezing weather. Foot protection was also important. Walking across frozen ground could damage bare feet. Wrapping feet in animal skins probably helped reduce injuries and keep them warmer. These coverings likely needed regular repair because rough ground caused wear. Hands faced constant exposure during hunting and toolmaking. Cold fingers lost movement and feeling. Simple coverings made from animal skins may have helped protect them during extremely cold weather, although using tools while wearing thick coverings remained difficult. Wind, snow, rain and freezing temperatures influenced every hunting trip. Hunters needed patience because animals often became harder to approach in open, snowy landscapes. They also needed strength to carry heavy meat back to their families across difficult ground. The harsh climate affected animal numbers. Some years brought larger herds, while other years reduced animal populations. Disease, severe winters, lack of food, or changing migration routes could lower the number of available animals. Hunters had to respond by searching wider areas. Predators also competed for food. Wolves, cave lions, cave hyenas, and bears hunted many of the same animals that Neanderthals wanted. Sometimes people reached an animal first. Other times they found remains left behind by predators. They had to judge whether it was safe to approach. Large predators also created danger near campsites. Food scraps attracted animals searching for easy meals. Neanderthal groups probably cleaned living areas and stayed alert, especially during the night. Seasonal flooding sometimes followed melting snow. Rivers overflowed onto nearby land. Camps built too close to water could become flooded. People needed experience to recognize safe places for building temporary homes. Changing temperatures affected stone itself. Repeated freezing and thawing broke apart rocks over long periods. These natural breaks sometimes created sharp stone pieces that people could collect and shape into useful tools. The climate influenced the kinds of plants available for medicine as well. Some useful plants grew only during warmer months. Families likely gathered them when possible because they might not be available during winter. The harsh environment demanded cooperation. Hunting large animals safely required several people working together. Gathering wood became easier when tasks were shared. Caring for children, older adults, and injured people depended on group effort. Living alone in such conditions would have been extremely difficult. Knowledge passed from one generation to another became one of the most valuable resources. Adults taught children where animals traveled, which plants could be eaten, how to make fires, how to prepare clothing, and where safe shelters could be found. This knowledge helped each new generation face the difficult climate. Different Neanderthal groups experienced different weather depending on where they lived. Southern regions often had milder winters than northern regions. Mountain areas experienced colder temperatures than lower lands. Coastal regions sometimes had different weather patterns from inland areas. Each group learned how to survive in its own surroundings. Ice ages did not remain constantly cold. Warmer periods interrupted colder ones from time to time. During these warmer intervals, plants spread into new areas, animals changed their ranges, and human groups adjusted their movements. When colder weather returned, many of these changes happened again. The climate continued changing throughout the long history of the Neanderthals. Every generation faced conditions that were slightly different from those experienced by earlier generations. These slow changes shaped hunting habits, travel routes, shelter choices, clothing, tool making, and daily life. The harsh climate remained one of the strongest influences on the lives of Neanderthals. Every sunrise brought decisions about warmth, food, water, safety, movement, and shelter. Every season demanded preparation. Every shift in weather changed how people hunted, gathered, traveled, worked, rested, cared for children, protected older family members, maintained fires, repaired clothing, and searched for the resources needed to continue living in a world where cold, wind, snow, ice, and changing seasons formed part of everyday life. Finding food was the most important part of everyday life for early human groups. Every day began with the need to search for enough food to keep everyone alive. There were no farms, no shops, no stored supplies that could last for many months, and no domesticated animals raised for meat or milk. People depended on the land around them. They learned to understand forests, open grasslands, rivers, lakes, hills, valleys, and rocky places. Because each area offered different kinds of food, their survival depended on knowing where to look, what to collect, what to hunt, and when different foods were available. Hunting and gathering was a way of life that lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. During this long period, people gained knowledge by watching nature every day. Parents taught their children where to find food, how to recognize useful plants, and how to avoid dangerous ones. Older members of the group shared their experience with younger people. This knowledge became one of the most valuable things any group could possess because it helped everyone stay alive. Gathering was often the most reliable way to find food. Wild plants could be found in many places during different seasons. People collected berries, nuts, seeds, roots, leaves, fruits, mushrooms, and many other edible plants. They also gathered flowers, young shoots, and plant stems when these were safe to eat. Some roots were dug from the ground using pointed wooden sticks or simple digging tools made from bone or antler. Digging required patience because many useful roots were hidden deep beneath the soil. People learned that different plants became ready at different times of the year. Some fruits appeared during warmer months. Certain nuts became ready during cooler seasons. Seeds could often be collected after plants had fully grown. This meant that people had to remember the right time to visit different places. A valley filled with fruit trees might provide food during one part of the year, but offer very little during another. A place rich in edible roots might remain useful for much longer, because roots stayed underground until they were collected. Early humans paid close attention to changes in the weather. Rain helped many plants grow. Long dry periods could reduce the number of fruits and leaves that were available. Cold weather changed the kinds of food that could be found. Snow covered many plants and made gathering more difficult. Strong winds sometimes knocked nuts and fruits onto the ground, making them easier to collect. Every season brought new opportunities as well as new problems. Gathering food required careful observation. Some berries looked safe but were poisonous. Certain mushrooms could make people very sick or even cause death. Children had to learn which plants could be eaten and which had to be avoided. Mistakes could have serious results. Families passed down this knowledge over many generations. The ability to recognize safe food became an important skill from an early age. Some plants needed special preparation before they could be eaten. Bitter roots were sometimes washed or cooked to improve their taste. Hard seeds could be crushed between stones before eating. Nuts were often broken open using rocks. Some fruits were dried in the sun to make them last longer. These simple methods allowed people to make better use of the food they found. Water was another important source of food. Rivers, streams, lakes, and coastal areas provided fish, shellfish, crabs, and other animals. Fish could be caught by hand in shallow water, trapped in small pools, or struck with sharpened wooden spears. In some places, people built simple barriers from branches and stones to guide fish into areas where they could be caught more easily. Shellfish were collected from shorelines during low water when they became easier to reach. Fishing required knowledge of the habits of different kinds of fish. Some fish stayed close to the surface while others lived deeper in the water. Some moved into rivers during certain times of the year. Early humans watched these movements carefully. They learned the best places to fish and the best times to visit them. Experience helped them increase their chances of success. Hunting provided meat, fat, bones, hides, and many other useful materials. Animals supplied food that could give people strength during difficult times. Meat was rich in nutrients that helped people remain healthy. Fat was especially valuable because it provided a great amount of energy. During cold weather, fat became even more important because the body needed extra energy to stay warm. Hunters searched for many different animals depending on where they lived. Small animals such as rabbits, birds, turtles, and rodents could often be caught without large hunting parties. Larger animals required more planning and cooperation. Deer, wild horses, wild cattle, bison, elk, wild pigs, mountain goats, and many other animals became important sources of food in different parts of the world. In colder regions, people hunted reindeer, musk oxen, and other animals that were able to survive freezing temperatures. Tracking animals was one of the most important hunting skills. Hunters studied footprints left in soft ground, snow, mud, or sand. They looked for broken branches, crushed grass, fresh droppings, and marks left by horns or antlers on trees. They listened carefully for sounds made by moving animals. Even a small clue could help hunters discover where a herd had gone. Hunters also learned to understand animal behavior. They noticed where animals drank water, where they rested, where they gave birth to their young, and where they searched for food. They knew that many animals followed regular paths between feeding areas and water sources. By waiting near these paths, hunters increased their chances of making a successful hunt. Patience was an important part of hunting. Hunters sometimes spent many hours waiting quietly without making unnecessary noise. Sudden movement could frighten animals away. A successful hunter needed self-control and careful attention. Groups often communicated using hand signals instead of loud voices when they were close to animals. The earliest hunting tools were simple but useful. Sharpened wooden sticks became effective spears. Later, stone points were attached to wooden shafts to create stronger hunting weapons. These stone points were carefully shaped by striking pieces from larger stones. Skilled toolmakers produced sharp edges that could cut through animal skin and flesh. Broken points could be replaced without making a completely new spear. Stone knives played an important role after a successful hunt. Hunters used them to remove meat from bones, separate skin from the body, and cut large pieces into smaller portions. Scrapers made from stone helped clean animal hides. Awls made from bone allowed people to make holes in hides for sewing clothing. Every useful part of an animal could be used for food or daily life. Working together increased the chance of success. A single hunter often struggled to bring down a large animal, but a group could surround it or guide it towards a better hunting area. Some people frightened animals while others waited in places where they expected the animals to run. Careful planning allowed groups to hunt more safely and effectively. Each person had an important role during the hunt. Hunting large animals carried serious risks. Many animals were powerful and could injure or kill hunters. Wild cattle, bison, and wild pigs defended themselves with great force. Deer and elk could strike with their antlers. Even smaller animals could bite or scratch when cornered. Hunters accepted these dangers because meat was an important source of food for the group. Sometimes hunts failed completely. Animals escaped before hunters got close enough. Changing winds carried human scent toward the animals, causing them to run away. Heavy rain erased tracks. Thick fog reduced visibility. Hunters often returned without meat after spending many hours searching. During these times, gathered plants and smaller animals became especially important. Children learned about hunting by watching older family members. They practiced throwing sticks before using real spears. They learned how to move quietly through forests and grasslands. As they grew older, they joined hunting trips and slowly gained experience. Learning happened over many years because successful hunting required many different skills. Older people remained valuable even if they no longer hunted large animals. They remembered where food could usually be found during different seasons. They recognized safe plants and dangerous ones. They knew how to prepare food and repair hunting tools. Their knowledge helped younger generations avoid mistakes and improve their chances of survival. Food sharing strengthened the group. A successful hunt often provided more meat than one family could eat immediately. People shared food with others because everyone depended on each other. On another day, someone else might return with meat or discover a place filled with edible plants. Sharing helped reduce hunger when hunting or gathering was unsuccessful for some members of the group. Food could not always be eaten immediately. Meat spoiled quickly, especially during warm weather. People developed simple ways to make food last longer. Thin strips of meat could be dried in the sun or over gentle smoke from a fire. Drying removes much of the moisture, slowing the growth of harmful organisms. Smoked meat often lasted longer than fresh meat if kept dry and protected from animals. Stone tools were among the earliest objects that human ancestors made with their own hands. These tools helped people carry out many daily tasks that would have been very difficult without them. They allowed people to cut, scrape, pound, break, shape, and prepare many different materials that they found in nature. The making of stone tools required careful thought, steady hands, and a good understanding of the stones that were available in the local area. People learned through practice which stones worked well and which ones did not. They also learned that some stones broke in ways that created very sharp edges, while others simply cracked into rough pieces that were not useful. This knowledge was passed from one generation to another through watching, copying, and regular practice. Young members of a group could see older and more skilled toolmakers at work and slowly learn the same methods over time. Long before metal was discovered and used, stone was one of the most useful materials available to human ancestors. It could be found in many places, including riverbanks, hillsides, rocky valleys, open grasslands, and mountain areas. Some stones were collected close to where people lived, while others were carried from places that were farther away because they had better quality. People learned that not every stone could be shaped into a useful tool. Soft stones often broke apart too easily or became dull after only a short time. Hard stones that broke in a smooth and controlled way were much more valuable because they produced strong tools with sharp, cutting edges. One of the stones that early people often chose was flint. Flint is a very hard stone that breaks in a smooth way when struck correctly. This allowed skilled toolmakers to create sharp edges that could cut through meat, plants, wood, and animal skin. Chert was another stone that was often used because it had many of the same qualities as flint. Quartzite was also common in many places. Although it could be harder to shape, it was strong and lasted a long time. Obsidian, which is natural volcanic glass, produced extremely sharp edges. However, obsidian was not found everywhere, so only people living near volcanic areas or those who received it through exchange with other groups could use it regularly. The process of making a stone tool usually began with finding the right piece of stone. A toolmaker would examine the shape, size, and quality of a stone before deciding whether it was suitable. Stones with large cracks were often avoided because they could break in unwanted ways. A good stone needed to be solid and free from weak points. The maker also looked for a size that matched the purpose of the tool. A small cutting tool required a smaller piece of stone, while a larger chopping tool needed a much bigger piece. After choosing a suitable stone, the toolmaker selected another stone to use as a hammer. This hammer stone had to be hard enough to strike the first stone without breaking apart immediately. The maker held the stone core in one hand or placed it on a firm surface before striking it carefully. Each strike had to be aimed at a suitable place and at the correct angle. If the blow was too weak, nothing useful happened. If it was too strong or struck at the wrong angle, the stone could shatter into useless pieces. When the strike was successful, a thin piece of stone called a flake came away from the main stone. These flakes often had very sharp edges that could be used immediately without further work. Sometimes the flake itself became the finished tool. At other times, the toolmaker shaped the flake even more by removing smaller pieces from its edges. This careful shaping created tools that were better suited for particular jobs. The main stone left behind after flakes had been removed was called the core. The core could also become a useful tool if it had suitable sharp edges. A skilled toolmaker knew how to remove flakes in a planned order, so that the remaining core had the desired shape. This required patience and experience because every strike changed the shape of the stone and affected the next strike. Early stone tool making was not simply a matter of hitting stones together without thinking. It involved careful planning. Before making the first strike, the toolmaker often had a clear idea of the final shape that was needed. Every blow had a purpose. Every removed flake changed the stone in a predictable way if the strike was made correctly. This ability to think ahead showed that early people had developed practical skills that improved through repeated experience. Some tools were made with only a few strikes because they were needed quickly. Others took much longer to finish because they required greater care. A finely shaped cutting tool could involve many small strikes around its edges until it reached the desired form. Each small piece removed from the edge helped improve the sharpness and shape of the finished tool. Stone tools served many different purposes in everyday life. One of their main uses was preparing food. After an animal was hunted or found dead, stone tools were used to remove the skin, cut the meat into smaller pieces, separate muscles from bones, and remove useful parts such as tendons and fat. Sharp flakes could slice through animal skin much more easily than hands alone. They also helped people remove meat from bones more completely, allowing them to make better use of every animal. Stone tools also helped people break open large bones. Inside many bones was soft marrow that contained valuable food. Early people used heavy stones or hammer stones to crack open the bones and reach this rich source of nutrition. The broken bones could also provide pieces that were later shaped into simple bone tools for other tasks. Plants were another important source of food, and stone tools made it easier to collect and prepare them. People could cut branches to gather fruits, dig for roots, remove tough outer coverings from certain plants, and cut edible stems into smaller pieces. Hard seeds and nuts could be broken open with pounding stones. Grinding stones were later developed to crush seeds into smaller pieces that were easier to eat or cook. Animal skins became very important because they could provide clothing, bedding, and coverings for shelters. Fresh animal skin contained fat, meat, and connective tissue that needed to be removed before the skin could be used properly. Stone scrapers were especially useful for this work. The sharp edge of a scraper allowed people to clean the inside surface of the skin by removing unwanted material. This made the skin softer and easier to prepare for later use. Woodworking also depended heavily on stone tools. Strong branches could be cut into smaller lengths for building shelters, making digging sticks, carrying poles, and simple handles. Wooden spears could be shaped by cutting away extra wood and sharpening one end into a point. Stone tools allowed people to smooth rough surfaces and shape wood into forms that matched their needs. Digging sticks became useful tools for collecting food from the ground. People used them to dig up roots, bulbs, and edible plants hidden beneath the soil. They could also be used to search for small animals living underground. A sharpened wooden stick prepared with the help of stone tools was much stronger and more useful than an unshaped branch picked up from the ground. Stone tools also played an important role in making other tools. A sharp stone blade could shape wood, bone, antler, and even other pieces of stone. This meant that one tool often helped create another. As people gained more experience, they became better at producing groups of tools designed for different jobs instead of relying on only one general tool. Different jobs required different tool shapes. Long, sharp flakes were useful for cutting. Wider blades worked well for scraping. Thick, heavy cores were suitable for chopping. Rounded hammerstones helped break bones and shape other stones. Toolmakers slowly learned which shapes worked best for each task through repeated use and careful observation. As people continued making tools over many generations, their methods became more organized. They no longer depended only on chance when shaping stone. Instead, they began preparing the stone before removing important flakes. This preparation allowed them to control the size and shape of the flakes more successfully. Better planning reduced waste and increased the number of useful tools produced from each stone. Sometimes a tool became dull after many hours of work. Instead of throwing it away immediately, people often sharpened it again by removing small flakes from its edge. This allowed the tool to remain useful for a longer time. Only after repeated sharpening, when the tool became too small or damaged, would it finally be discarded. Even then, broken pieces could sometimes serve smaller purposes before they were left behind. Stone tools were valuable enough that people often carried them while moving from one place to another. A family or group traveling across the land needed reliable cutting and scraping tools wherever they went. Carrying finished tools saved time because new ones did not have to be made immediately after arriving at a new camp. People also carried suitable pieces of raw stone so they could make additional tools whenever necessary. The places where stone tools were made sometimes became covered with small flakes left behind during the shaping process. Today, archaeologists study these flakes carefully because they provide important information about how tools were made. The size, shape, and number of flakes help researchers understand the methods used by ancient toolmakers and the kinds of activities that took place at a particular site. Stone tool making required practice over many years. Beginners often produced rough tools with uneven edges because they had not yet learned the correct striking angle or the proper amount of force. More experienced toolmakers could shape stone with greater control and produce tools that were thinner, sharper, and more reliable. This difference in skill suggests that knowledge was taught within families and groups, allowing each new generation to improve its abilities. People also learned that weather and the condition of the stone affected the outcome. Some stones became easier to work after being warmed carefully near a fire, although this required great care because too much heat could cause the stone to crack unexpectedly. Careful treatment helped improve the quality of certain materials and made shaping easier. The making and use of stone tools became an important part of everyday life. Nearly every activity connected with food, shelter, clothing, hunting, gathering, woodworking, and preparing useful materials depended on these carefully shaped pieces of stone. Skilled hands, patient practice, and shared knowledge allowed people to create tools that met many different needs, and each successful tool reflected experience gained through repeated work over many generations. For Neanderthals, finding a safe place to live was one of the most important parts of everyday life. A shelter was much more than a place to sleep. It was where families stayed together, where food was shared, where tools were made and repaired, where children grew up, where older members rested, and where people stayed warm during cold weather. Every day brought new challenges, and having a place that offered safety helped them face those challenges. The places they called home were chosen with care because the right location could make life easier and increase the chances of survival. Neanderthals lived across large parts of Europe and Western Asia during a time when the climate often changed. Some years were colder, while other periods became warmer. Ice covered large parts of the land during the coldest times. Forests spread during warmer times, and open grasslands appeared when the weather became colder and drier. Because the land changed over long periods, Neanderthals also changed the places where they lived. They did not remain in one home forever. Many groups moved from place to place as they searched for food, water, stone for making tools, and safe places to live. One of the best places for Neanderthals to live was inside a cave. Natural caves were already formed inside hills and mountains. These caves protected people from rain, snow, strong winds, and freezing temperatures. Thick rock walls blocked much of the cold air from reaching the people inside. The roof protected them from falling snow and heavy rain. During harsh weather, a cave could become a safe place where people could rest while waiting for better conditions outside. Not every cave was suitable for living. Some caves were too dark, too wet, too small, or too difficult to enter. Neanderthals usually preferred caves that had wide openings where daylight could enter. Light made it easier to carry out daily work, such as preparing food, making tools, repairing wooden spears, and watching children. Fresh air could also move through these openings, helping smoke from fires leave the cave. A cave with a dry floor was more comfortable than one filled with water or mud. Many caves had areas near the entrance where sunlight reached during part of the day. These places were often the most useful. People could enjoy warmth from the sun while still remaining protected by the rocky walls. They could watch the land outside for animals or possible danger without leaving the shelter. Being able to see the surrounding area was important because wild animals and unfamiliar human groups sometimes came close. Deep inside a cave, darkness could become complete. Neanderthals probably did not spend much time in these dark areas unless there was a special reason. Fires provided some light, but they could not fully brighten the deepest parts of large caves. Most daily activities likely happened closer to the entrance, where natural light made work easier. Archaeologists have found many signs showing that Neanderthals used caves as homes. Stone tools, broken animal bones, pieces of charcoal, burned wood, and fireplaces have been discovered in caves across Europe and Western Asia. These discoveries show that people returned to some caves many times over many years. A cave that offered good protection and easy access to food could remain useful for generations. Inside these caves, Neanderthals organized their living space. Areas close to the fire were probably used for cooking and staying warm. Other places may have been used for making stone tools. Animal skins may have been cleaned and prepared in another area. Bones left after meals were often thrown into separate places. Even though these people lived many thousands of years ago, they appear to have kept different activities in different parts of their living space. Fire played a central role inside their shelters. Without fire, many caves would have been too cold to live in during winter. Fire gave warmth, light, and protection from many dangerous animals. It also allowed meat to be cooked and helped dry wet clothing or animal skins. A fire burning inside a cave made it possible for families to gather together after the day's work. People could repair tools, prepare food, and care for children while sitting near the warmth. Smoke from fires could become a problem inside enclosed spaces. Neanderthals probably placed their fires where smoke could move towards the cave entrance and escape outside. Openings in caves allowed fresh air to enter, while smoke drifted away. Choosing the right place for a fire required experience because too much smoke could make breathing difficult. Some caves were occupied by animals before Neanderthals arrived. Bears, lions, hyenas, wolves, and other animals also used caves for shelter. Neanderthals sometimes had to wait until these animals left. In other cases, they may have driven them away. Archaeologists have found caves containing the remains of both humans and large animals, showing that different creatures used the same places during different times. Caves were not the only homes Neanderthals used. Many parts of their world had very few caves. In these places, they built simple shelters in open areas. These shelters were made from materials that could be found nearby. Strong branches formed the main frame. Smaller sticks were placed across them. Animal skins, leaves, grass, and other natural materials could cover the outside. These shelters helped reduce the effects of wind and rain while providing a place to sleep and rest. Wood was one of the most useful building materials available to Neanderthals. Trees provided long branches that could support a shelter. Smaller branches filled empty spaces. Wood was also needed for fires, hunting spears, digging sticks, and many other daily tasks. Groups living near forests had easier access to building materials than groups living on open grasslands. Animal skins were valuable because they served many purposes. Thick skins could cover shelters and reduce the amount of cold air entering inside. They also helped keep out light rain and snow. Preparing these skins required careful work. Fat, flesh, and hair had to be removed or treated depending on how the skins would be used. Stone scrapers were important tools for this work. Some shelters were probably built for short stays. A hunting group following migrating animals might remain in one place for only a few days or weeks before moving again. In these cases, there was little reason to build large structures. Quick shelters made from branches and skins could be built without spending too much time or energy. When the group moved, many of the materials could be left behind because nature would slowly break them down. Other camps may have been used for longer periods. If food, water, wood, and stone were easy to find nearby, Neanderthals could remain there for many weeks or even months. During these longer stays, shelters may have become stronger and more organized. Fires were maintained, tools were repaired, and families settled into daily routines that made life more comfortable. Water was another important reason for choosing a place to live. Rivers, streams, lakes, and natural springs supplied drinking water for both people and animals. Animals often gathered near water, making hunting easier. Plants growing close to water could also provide food and useful materials. Living close to water reduced the need for long daily journeys. The land around a shelter also mattered. High ground allowed people to watch the surrounding area more easily. Open spaces made it easier to see approaching animals. Areas near forests offered wood, edible plants, and animals that lived among the trees. Rocky places often supplied the stone needed for making tools. Choosing a good home meant thinking about many different needs at the same time. Stone suitable for making tools was not found everywhere. Neanderthals valued places where high-quality stone could be collected without traveling great distances. Flint, chert, and other hard stones could be shaped into sharp cutting edges. Living close to these resources allowed damaged tools to be replaced whenever necessary. Skilled toolmakers probably spent many hours shaping stone near their shelters, creating knives, scrapers, spear points, and many other useful tools. The remains found by archaeologists suggest that some shelters were used again and again over long periods. A group might leave during one season and return later when conditions become favorable once more. Familiar places offered known sources of water, food, firewood, and stone. Returning to successful camps reduced some of the uncertainty involved in finding new places to live. Clothing was one of the most important parts of daily life for early humans who lived in very cold places. Long before people learned how to make cloth from cotton, wool, or other materials used today, they depended on the natural resources around them to cover their bodies. Cold weather could make daily life very difficult. Snow, ice, freezing winds, and very low temperatures could quickly remove body heat. Without enough protection, people could become weak, sick, or even die from the cold. For this reason, finding ways to stay warm became a necessary part of survival. Every hunting trip, every journey across open land, and every night spent outdoors required clothing that could help keep body heat close to the skin. Neanderthals lived across many parts of Europe and Western Asia during long periods when the climate was often much colder than it is today. Many of the places where they lived had long winters, frozen rivers, deep snow, and strong winds. In some areas, trees were few and large open lands stretched for great distances. The weather changed with the seasons, but cold conditions often lasted for many months. Neanderthals had to spend much of their lives outside while searching for food, gathering useful materials, and moving from one place to another. They could not remain indoors for long because they needed fresh meat, wood for fires, stone for tools, and many other natural resources. Their bodies helped them deal with cold weather. They had strong muscles, wide chests, and solid bones. Their bodies also helped keep heat inside. Even with these natural features, they still needed clothing. The human body can lose heat through the skin very quickly. When it is exposed to freezing air, wet skin loses heat even faster. Snow, rain, and icy winds could make conditions even harder. Clothing acted as a barrier that reduced the amount of heat escaping from the body. This made it easier for people to remain active while hunting, walking, carrying food, or caring for children. The earliest clothing was almost certainly made from animal skins. Large animals provided food, and they also provided materials that could be used in many different ways. After an animal was hunted, every useful part was valuable. Meat became food. Bones could become tools. Antlers could be shaped into useful objects. Animal skins became clothing, blankets, and coverings for shelters. Nothing useful was wasted because every resource required hard work to obtain. Removing the skin from an animal was an important task. Stone tools with sharp edges were used to cut around the legs and body. The skin had to be carefully separated from the meat without making large tears. A damaged skin could still be useful, but a complete skin offered more ways to make clothing or shelter coverings. This work required skill and patience because a mistake could reduce the value of the skin. Fresh animal skins could not be worn immediately for very long. They still contained fat, pieces of meat, and moisture. If left untreated, they could rot and produce a very unpleasant smell. They also became stiff after drying. Neanderthals likely learned through experience that cleaning the skin made it last longer. They probably scraped away fat and leftover flesh with stone scrapers. These tools were specially shaped with broad edges that made them useful for preparing hides. Scraping was hard work. The worker had to push the sharp edge across the inside of the skin again and again. This removed soft tissue that could spoil. It also made the skin smoother. Large animal hides required many hours of work before they were ready for further treatment. This work may have been shared among members of the group, especially when several animals were hunted at the same time. Scientists believe Neanderthals found different ways to soften animal hides. One method may have involved stretching the skin while it dried. Another may have included rubbing animal fat into the hide. Brains from hunted animals contain natural oils that help soften leather. Many later hunting groups around the world used animal brains to prepare hides, and some researchers believe Neanderthals may have discovered similar methods through long experience. Soft hides were easier to wrap around the body and more comfortable to wear during daily activities. Smoke from fires may also have helped preserve the animal's skins. Hanging hides near a fire allowed smoke to pass through them. Smoke helped reduce moisture and slowed the growth of tiny living organisms that caused decay. The smell of smoke may also have helped keep some insects away from stored hides. Preparing hides probably became an important skill that was passed from older people to younger members of the group. Different animals provided different kinds of skins. Reindeer had thick fur that trapped warm air. Bison and wild cattle had large hides that could cover much of the body. Deer skins were softer and easier to shape into clothing. Bear skins provided heavy protection during very cold weather. Wolves and foxes had thick fur that could be used for smaller coverings. Each type of skin had qualities that made it useful for different purposes. The fur was often left attached to the hide because it added extra warmth. Hair trapped air close to the skin, helping reduce heat loss. During winter, thick fur was especially valuable. In warmer seasons, lighter skins may have been more comfortable. People probably changed the clothing they wore as the weather changed throughout the year. Some clothing may have been simple wraps placed around the shoulders and tied with strips of leather. Other pieces may have covered the legs or arms. Large skins could be wrapped around the entire body while resting or sleeping. Smaller skins could protect children or older people who were more likely to become cold. People may have worn several layers during the coldest months to keep more body heat inside. Leather strips could be cut from hides and used as ties. These strips helped hold clothing in place while walking or hunting. They may have been tied around the waist, shoulders, wrists, or ankles. Tightening clothing around these areas reduced the amount of cold air entering through open spaces. Needles made from bone appear much later in human history, but Neanderthals may still have joined pieces of hide together using simple tools. Sharp bone points or stone awls could make small holes through leather. Thin leather strips or animal sinew could then pass through these holes to join separate pieces. Sinew comes from the strong tissues that connect muscles to bones. After drying, sinew becomes very strong and worked well as natural thread. Clothing did not need to be beautiful to be useful. Its main purpose was to keep people alive. Every piece had to serve a practical purpose. Thick coverings protected the chest, back, shoulders, and legs. Hands and feet also needed protection because they were exposed while working outdoors. Cold fingers lose strength and movement quickly. Warm hands made it easier to hold tools, carry wood, prepare food, and care for children. Simple hand coverings may have been made by wrapping small pieces of fur around the hands and tying them with leather strips. These coverings probably did not fit closely like modern gloves, but they still reduced heat loss. Fur around the wrists also helped block cold air from reaching the skin. Feet required special care because people spent much of their lives walking across rough ground. Sharp rocks, frozen soil, snow, ice, and broken branches could injure bare feet. Animal skins wrapped around the feet created simple shoes. Leather ties held these coverings in place. Dry grass, soft moss, or animal fur may have been placed inside to provide extra warmth and comfort. These natural materials also helped absorb moisture from sweat. Walking through snow with protected feet allowed people to travel farther. While searching for food, frozen ground could quickly damage unprotected skin. Small cuts could become serious problems because they made walking painful. Strong foot coverings reduced these dangers and helped people remain active during long hunting trips. Children needed clothing just as much as adults. Young bodies lose heat more quickly than larger bodies. Babies especially required constant warmth. Mothers and other family members likely wrapped babies in soft animal skins while carrying them. These coverings helped keep infants warm while adults gathered food or travelled between camps. Children learning to walk probably wore simple fur coverings that allowed movement while protecting them from the cold ground. Older members of the group also benefited from warm clothing. As people aged, moving became more difficult. Warm hides helped them remain comfortable while resting near fires or taking part in daily activities. Older people likely shared knowledge about preparing hides, making tools, and surviving harsh winters, making their care important for the whole group. Clothing also protected the body from injuries. Thick leather reduced damage caused by branches, rough rocks, and thorny plants. During hunting, hides provided a small amount of protection if an animal brushed against the hunter, or if the person fell while running. Although clothing could not stop every injury, it reduced many small cuts and scratches that happened during everyday life. Rain created another challenge. Wet clothing loses much of its ability to keep people warm. Neanderthals probably tried to dry wet hides near their fires whenever possible. Fires became important not only for cooking food, but also for drying clothing, warming bodies, and preparing hides for future use. Damp clothing placed too close to flames could burn or become damaged, so people had to watch carefully while drying it. Clothing needed regular care. Leather could become stiff after getting wet and drying again. It could tear during hunting or while climbing over rocks. Damaged pieces had to be repaired because replacing them required another successful hunt. People probably checked their clothing often and fixed small tears before they became larger. The making of clothing was connected to many other parts of daily life. Hunters brought back animals. Other members of the group cleaned the hides. Stone toolmakers created scrapers and cutting tools. Fires helped dry and preserve leather. Everyone likely played some part in turning animal skins into useful clothing. This shared work helped the entire group survive through long periods of cold weather. Preparing clothing also required planning. People needed to save hides from successful hunts because they could not depend on catching animals every day. Extra hides may have been stored inside shelters where they stayed dry. Having spare clothing ready before winter arrived increased the chances of surviving the cold months. The changing seasons affected the kinds of clothing people used. During warmer times, lighter coverings were enough for many activities. During colder months, thicker hides with dense fur became much more important. Heavy snow, freezing winds, and low temperatures required stronger protection. People who understood these seasonal changes were better prepared for the challenges ahead. Neanderthals probably learned these skills over many generations. Young people watched older family members scrape hides, cut leather strips, soften skins, and wrap clothing around the body. Children likely practiced with small pieces before learning to prepare large hides on their own. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next helped each new group survive the cold conditions they faced. The success of clothing depended on careful observation. People noticed which animal hides lasted longer, which remained softer, which kept more warmth, and which became damaged quickly. This practical knowledge grew through daily experience. Every successful hunt added new materials. Every winter provided new lessons about what worked best in freezing weather. Communication was one of the most important parts of early human life. Long before people learned how to write words on stone, clay, or paper, they needed ways to share ideas with the people around them. They needed to tell others where food could be found, where danger was waiting, when it was time to move, and how to work together. Life depended on sharing information. Every day brought new challenges, and no one could survive for very long without help from others. Because of this, communication slowly became a natural and necessary part of human life. The earliest humans probably began with very simple forms of communication. They may have made different sounds to express fear, happiness, pain, anger, or excitement. These sounds were not yet full language, but they helped others understand what was happening. A loud cry could warn people that a dangerous animal was nearby. A happy sound could show that food had been found. A soft sound could calm a child or comfort another member of the group after an injury. These sounds carried meaning even without complete words. Body movements were also very important. Early humans could point with their hands to show the direction of food or water. They could wave their arms to call people together. A raised hand might tell others to stop moving. A quick movement of the head could warn people to stay quiet. Facial expressions also helped people understand feelings. A smile could show kindness. A worried face could show fear. Wide eyes could warn of danger. These simple actions allowed people to understand one another before spoken language became more developed. Living in groups made communication even more important. People hunted together, gathered plants together, protected children together, and shared places to sleep. All these activities required people to understand each other. If everyone acted alone without sharing information, the group would struggle to survive. Communication helped people work as one group instead of many separate individuals. Young children learned by watching older people. A child could see how an adult shaped a stone tool, started a fire, or cleaned an animal after a hunt. Adults often used gestures and simple sounds while teaching these skills. Children copied these actions again and again until they learned them. This process allowed knowledge to pass from one generation to the next without written records. Early language probably did not appear all at once. It likely developed slowly over many thousands of years. Small groups of sounds began to carry specific meanings. Certain sounds may have referred to water, food, fire, animals, or family members. As people repeated these sounds many times, everyone in the group learned what they meant. Over time, more sounds gained meaning, allowing people to express a greater number of ideas. As human brains became more developed, people gained a better ability to remember sounds and connect them with objects, actions, and people. Memory became an important part of communication. People could remember where food had been found during earlier seasons. They could remember dangerous places to avoid. They could share these memories with younger members of the group through speech and gestures. Neanderthals also lived in groups where communication was necessary every day. They hunted large animals, cared for injured members, made stone tools, built shelters, and protected their families from harsh weather. These activities required planning and teamwork. Many researchers believe Neanderthals had some form of spoken communication. While scientists continue to study exactly how advanced their language may have been, many signs suggest they were able to exchange important information through sounds, gestures, and expressions. The structure of the human throat, tongue, mouth, and voice box plays an important part in speech. Over a long period, these parts of the body changed in ways that allowed clearer speech sounds. The brain also developed areas that supported language, memory, and understanding. These changes did not happen quickly. They took place over many generations as humans continued to adapt to different environments and challenges. Listening became just as important as speaking. A person needed to pay close attention to what others were saying. During a hunt, ignoring a warning could place everyone in danger. During a journey, failing to understand directions could lead the group into unsafe places. Careful listening helped people make better decisions and increased their chances of survival. Communication also helped people build stronger social relationships. Family members comforted one another after difficult experiences. Parents calmed frightened children. Friends shared laughter after successful hunts. Older people encouraged younger people while teaching important skills. These everyday moments created trust inside the group. Trust allowed people to depend on one another during difficult times. As groups became larger, communication became even more useful. More people meant more knowledge, but it also meant greater need for organization. People needed ways to decide where to travel, where to build temporary shelters, and how to share food fairly. Clear communication reduced confusion and helped groups remain united. Different sounds probably carried different meanings depending on the situation. A warning call during a hunt was different from a call used to gather family members together. Gentle sounds used with children were different from loud sounds used during danger. Over time, people learned to recognize these differences without needing long explanations. Art, symbols, and burial practices give people a way to understand how Neanderthals lived, what they believed, how they cared for one another, and how they expressed their thoughts. These parts of their lives cannot always be seen as clearly as their stone tools or the bones of the animals they hunted, because many of the things they made from wood, leaves, grass, or other natural materials disappeared long ago. Even so, the discoveries made by archaeologists over many years have shown that Neanderthals did much more than search for food and protect themselves from cold weather. They also left signs that they paid attention to the world around them, noticed beauty in natural objects, remembered members of their groups after death, and carried out actions that may have had special meaning. The study of Neanderthal art and symbols is not always simple. Many objects are very old, and some have been damaged by water, wind, animals, or changes in the ground over thousands of years. Sometimes experts disagree about the meaning of a discovery because there is not enough evidence to be completely certain. Even when different ideas exist, each new discovery helps people understand more about Neanderthal life. Every cave, rock shelter, and open campsite adds another small piece to the story. Neanderthals lived across large parts of Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. During this long time, they experienced changing weather, moving ice sheets, warm periods, and cold periods. They adapted to many different places and lived in forests, grasslands, mountains, river valleys, and coastal areas. As their lives changed, their customs and daily activities may also have changed. This means that not every Neanderthal group behaved in exactly the same way. Some groups may have created more objects with special meaning than others. Some may have followed different customs when someone died, just as people living in different places today have different traditions. Neanderthal groups may also have had different ways of expressing themselves. One important question that scientists have asked for many years is whether Neanderthals created art. Art can take many forms. It can include drawings, markings, decorated objects, carvings, or items made simply because they looked pleasing. It does not always have to serve a practical purpose. Finding proof of ancient art is difficult because many materials do not survive for very long. Wood can rot away, cloth can disappear, and painted surfaces can fade. Because of this, only a small part of what Neanderthals may have created has survived until today. Some caves connected with Neanderthals contain marks on walls that have attracted great interest. These marks include lines, shapes, and areas colored with natural pigments. Red, yellow, brown, and black colors could be made from minerals found in the ground. One common material was red ochre, a natural earth rich in iron. Black pigments could come from charcoal or manganese. Neanderthals could collect these materials, crush them into powder, and sometimes mix them with water, animal fat, or plant juices to create color. These colors could then be placed on rocks, objects, or even human skin. Some cave markings appear to have been placed deliberately rather than being formed naturally. Straight lines, handmade shapes, and areas where pigment was carefully spread suggest that people intentionally created them. Scientists study these markings closely to determine whether Neanderthals made them or whether they were created later by modern humans who entered the same caves. Special methods are used to estimate the age of the markings, although dating ancient cave art is often difficult. Some researchers believe that certain painted cave markings were made by Neanderthals long before modern humans arrived in those areas. If this idea is correct, it would show that Neanderthals were able to create meaningful images or signs. It would also suggest that they used color for reasons beyond everyday survival. Even though experts continue to study the evidence, these discoveries have encouraged new ideas about Neanderthal abilities. Apart from cave markings, archaeologists have found objects that appear to have been selected because they looked unusual or attractive. Some Neanderthal sites contain shells collected from the sea, even though the sea was not always close to where they lived. This means that people may have carried these shells over long distances. Some shells have small holes that appear suitable for hanging with string or animal sinew. This has led some researchers to think that the shells may have been worn as personal ornaments. Bird feathers may also have been important. Certain bird bones found at Neanderthal sites suggest that large feathers were removed carefully rather than simply being left behind after eating. Bright feathers may have been used to decorate clothing, hair, or other objects. Since feathers usually decay quickly, very little direct evidence survives, but the marks left on bird bones help scientists understand what may have happened. Large bird claws have also been discovered at some Neanderthal sites. These claws often came from birds of prey, such as eagles. They show signs of careful removal. Since bird claws have little food value, some experts think they were collected for decoration or for symbolic reasons. They may have been attached to clothing, worn as ornaments, or kept because they held special meaning within a group. Neanderthals also collected unusual stones, crystals, and fossils. Some stones were not useful for making tools but had interesting colors, smooth surfaces, or unusual shapes. Crystals that reflected light may have attracted attention because of their appearance. Fossils from much older animals were sometimes carried into camps. These objects may have been collected simply because they were interesting, or they may have held meanings that are now impossible to know. The use of color appears in several Neanderthal sites. Red ochre is one of the most common pigments linked with ancient people. grinding stones stained with red powder, show that pigments were prepared carefully. Pieces of ochre with scraping marks suggest that Neanderthals worked the material before using it. The colour may have been placed on skin, clothing, tools, animal hides, or other objects. It may also have been connected with ceremonies or group traditions. Symbols are another important subject in the study of Neanderthals. A symbol is something that stands for an idea, memory, group identity, or belief. Modern people use flags, signs, written letters, and pictures as symbols. Ancient people may have used simple marks, colours, or objects in similar ways. It is difficult to prove that an object was symbolic because the people who made it left no written explanation. Archaeologists therefore examine many details before suggesting symbolic behaviour. Patterns carved into bones or stones have attracted attention because they do not appear necessary for everyday use. Some carved lines seem carefully arranged rather than random. They may have served as decorations, ownership marks, counting systems, or symbols understood only by members of the group. Without written records, their exact meaning remains unknown. One famous object linked with Neanderthals is a small engraved bone that contains a series of carefully cut lines. Researchers have examined the cuts under powerful microscopes. The lines appear to have been made intentionally using stone tools. The spacing and direction suggest planning rather than accidental damage. Although no one knows what the marks meant, they demonstrate careful work and attention to detail. The ability to recognize patterns and create lasting marks is connected with thinking skills. A person who carves repeated designs onto an object is showing planning, control, and intention. Whether those designs carried symbolic meaning or simply reflected personal choice remains uncertain. But they show that Neanderthals could create objects beyond immediate survival needs. Many researchers also study the possibility that Neanderthals decorated their bodies. Decoration can strengthen group identity, mark important events, or express personal choices. If Neanderthals wore shells, feathers, claws, or coloured pigments on their bodies, these items may have helped people recognize members of their own group or identify individuals during gatherings. Clothing made from animal hides probably formed the main protection against cold weather. Simple decorations attached to clothing could have made one person's appearance different from another's. Since leather, thread, and many plant fibers decay over time, direct proof is limited. Small holes in shells and wear marks on certain objects suggest that some items were suspended or attached rather than simply stored. Firelight inside caves may have changed the appearance of decorated objects. Shiny shells, polished stones, crystals, and colourful pigments would have looked different when illuminated by flames. Evening gatherings around fires may have provided opportunities for storytelling, teaching young people, sharing memories, or carrying out special activities connected with important events. Storytelling itself leaves no physical evidence, yet many scientists believe that Neanderthals probably shared knowledge through spoken communication. Stories could explain hunting experiences, dangerous places, family history, or important traditions. Objects with symbolic meaning may have been used while telling these stories, helping younger members remember important lessons. Burial practices provide some of the strongest evidence that Neanderthals treated their dead differently from abandoned animal remains. Archaeologists have discovered several skeletons lying in positions that suggest careful placement inside pits dug into the ground. The bodies often remained largely complete, indicating that they were covered soon after death, rather than left exposed to animals. One reason scientists believe some Neanderthals buried their dead is the position of the skeletons. In several cases, the bodies rested on their sides, with arms and legs bent naturally. The surrounding soil appeared disturbed in ways suggesting that a pit had been dug and later filled. Such careful placement differs from bones scattered randomly across a campsite. The cave known as Shanidar has provided some of the most important Neanderthal discoveries. Several individuals were found there, including adults and children. One skeleton belonged to a man who had lived for many years despite serious injuries. He had lost part of one arm, suffered damage to one eye, and experienced other physical problems. His survival suggests that other members of his group helped care for him over a long period. The care shown to injured individuals is closely connected with burial practices, because both reflect concern for other people. A group willing to feed, protect, and support someone unable to hunt also may have chosen to treat that person's body with respect after death. Some researchers once believed that pollen found around one Shanidar burial showed that flowers had been placed with the dead. This idea became widely known and suggested that Neanderthals held ceremonies involving flowers. Later studies proposed that burrowing animals may have carried much of the pollen into the burial area after the body was placed there. Even though the flower idea remains uncertain, the burial itself continues to be important evidence of deliberate treatment of the dead. Another well-known burial site comes from La Chapelle-aux-Saints. The skeleton found there appeared to lie inside a prepared pit. The body belonged to an older adult who had lost many teeth before death. Despite these problems, the individual lived long enough for the tooth sockets to heal, showing that food was probably prepared in ways that allowed continued survival. This again points toward care within the group. At several other sites, Neanderthal remains have been found in ways suggesting intentional burial. Each site has unique details. Some skeletons appear complete and undisturbed. Others are less certain, because later changes in the ground may have affected their position. Archaeologists examine soil layers, nearby tools, animal bones, and surrounding sediments before deciding whether a burial was deliberate. Children were also buried at some Neanderthal sites. The careful placement of young individuals suggests that all members of the group could receive attention after death regardless of age. The death of a child would have affected the entire community, especially in groups where every member was important for future survival. The act of digging a grave requires effort. Stone tools, wooden digging sticks, or animal bones may have been used to loosen the ground. This work took time and energy that could otherwise have been spent collecting food or making tools. Choosing to bury someone therefore suggests that the action held importance for the group. Scientists continue to discuss why Neanderthals buried their dead. One possibility is practical. Covering a body could reduce the chance of attracting large animals. Another possibility involves emotional attachment. Family members may not have wanted to leave loved ones exposed. Burial may also have reflected beliefs about death that can no longer be known. More than one reason could have influenced their actions. Objects found with some burials have raised further questions. Stone tools, animal bones, or other materials sometimes appear near skeletons. These objects may have been placed intentionally or may simply have become mixed into the soil during burial. Determining the difference is not always easy. Careful excavation helps archaeologists study the exact position of every object before removing it. Some burials show evidence that the body was laid gently into the grave rather than dropped carelessly. The arrangement of bones indicates that soft tissues held the skeleton together, while the body rested in place. Over time, the body naturally decomposed, leaving the bones in positions that reflected the original placement.